Success in the NBA has never been just about talent. It's about timing, about recognizing windows of opportunity when they're open, and having the courage to make bold moves when the moment demands it. Right now, the Los Angeles Lakers are experiencing something most analysts didn't predict, something that's forcing the entire league to reconsider what this team is capable of. And more importantly, it's creating a situation where the front office might need to act decisively before this window closes. Welcome to Lakers News Fan Report, your home for the freshest updates, the deepest analysis, and all the breaking news surrounding our beloved Lakers. I'm here to bring you something today that could define the rest of this season, something that's being discussed in circles close to the organization, and something that every Lakers fan needs to understand because the implications stretch far beyond just one potential move. Let me paint the picture for you: 16 wins and 6 losses. That's where we stood as of early December, tied for third place in what might be the most competitive Western Conference we've seen in years. Think about that for a moment. Before the season started, the narrative around this Lakers team was cautious at best, pessimistic at worst. Analysts predicted we'd be fighting for a play-in spot, that we'd be lucky to secure a 6th seed, that this roster had too many question marks to compete with the elite teams in the West. And yet here we are, defying expectations, winning games we weren't supposed to win, and looking like a legitimate contender in a conference that includes Oklahoma City, Denver, Phoenix, and a host of other talented squads. What's driving this unexpected success? There are multiple factors, and understanding each one is crucial to appreciating where we are and where we could potentially go. First, J.J. Redick has exceeded every expectation as a first-year head coach. The offensive system he's implemented has unlocked dimensions of this team that previous coaching staffs couldn't access. His ability to communicate with players, to make in-game adjustments, and to maximize the talent on this roster has been nothing short of impressive. Second, DeAndre Ayton has been a pleasant surprise. When we acquired him, there were questions about his motor, his consistency, his ability to be a difference maker in crucial moments. But he's answered those questions with solid play, providing rim protection and rebounding that this team desperately needed. Third, and perhaps most importantly, we're witnessing the emergence of one of the most dynamic backcourts in the entire NBA. Austin Reaves has taken another leap in his development. We've watched him evolve from an undrafted player fighting for minutes to a legitimate isolation creator, a player who can run pick and roll, create his own shot, and make plays for others in crucial moments. His chemistry with our other star guard has been electric, and the two-man game they've developed is creating matchup nightmares for opposing defenses. When you have two guards who can both handle, shoot, pass, and create at an elite level, it opens up everything else offensively. It creates space for LeBron to operate, it gives role players open looks, and it forces defenses into impossible situations where they have to choose which poison to take. But here's where the conversation gets interesting, and this is where I need you to really focus, because what I'm about to discuss could determine whether this season ends in disappointment or celebration. Despite the impressive record, despite the offensive firepower, despite exceeding expectations, there are legitimate concerns about this roster that can't be ignored. The defense has been problematic. We're allowing over 116 points per game, which is simply not good enough if we want to compete for a championship. Elite teams in this league can score at will, and if we can't get stops when it matters, all the offensive talent in the world won't be enough in a 7-game series against the best teams in the West. The rim protection issues are real. When teams attack the paint, when they get downhill and challenge us at the basket, we've struggled to consistently protect that area. Part of it is personnel, part of it is scheme, but the result is the same. Too many easy baskets for opponents, too many second-chance opportunities, and too much pressure on our perimeter defenders to be perfect, because they know if they get beaten, there might not be adequate help behind them. the lack of athleticism across certain parts of the roster is also a concern. As the season grinds on, as the wear and tear accumulates, as we face teams with younger, more athletic wings who can run in transition and create havoc defensively, our inability to match that athleticism could become a significant problem. Now, there's been discussion among those who cover this team closely about potential solutions. The internal adjustments are being considered, things like changing the front court rotation, moving certain players to bench roles to optimize lineups, experimenting with different combinations to find what works best defensively. Those are all valid short-term solutions that could help. But there's a growing sentiment that a more significant move might be necessary, that this team might need to make an acquisition to truly maximize this season's potential. And this is where the conversation gets fascinating, because we're not just talking about adding a role player or making a minor tweak around the edges. We're talking about potentially making a move that could transform this team's defensive identity. Consider the context here. This could be LeBron James's final season with the Lakers. At his age, with his mileage, with the way his career has unfolded, every season has to be treated as potentially his last at an elite level. When you have a player of LeBron's caliber still performing at a high level, when you have a roster that's exceeded expectations and shown it can compete, the obligation to maximize that window becomes urgent. You can't waste these opportunities because they don't come around often, and when they're gone forever. The front office understands this, the coaching staff understands this, and Lakers fans certainly understand this. But here's the challenge, and this is where the complexity of modern NBA roster construction comes into play. What kind of trade can we realistically make that would significantly improve this team's championship odds? Austin Reaves is untouchable, and rightfully so. He's our most valuable trade asset outside of our star players, but he's also integral to everything we do offensively. His chemistry with the team, his improvement as a creator, his ability to play both on and off the ball, all of it makes him too valuable to move. Plus, he's a free agent at the end of this season, and there's every indication he wants to stay in Los Angeles given how his game has flourished here. Trading him would be short-sighted and counterproductive. LeBron's situation is complicated by multiple factors. His age, while he's still playing at an incredibly high level, makes teams cautious about what they'd give up to acquire him. His injury history, though he's been relatively healthy this season, is something teams have to consider when evaluating a potential trade. And perhaps most importantly, the salary cap implications of trading LeBron, especially with the second apron restrictions that exist in today's NBA, make any deal extraordinarily difficult to construct. The financial gymnastics required to make a LeBron trade work, combined with the limited return we'd likely get, given all these factors, probably makes it a non-starter. So if we can't trade our most valuable assets, what options exist? This is where the conversation about making a move on the edges becomes relevant. We're talking about identifying a player who could fill a specific need, someone who addresses our defensive deficiencies without requiring us to gut the core of what's working. We need a wing defender, someone with length and athleticism, someone who can guard multiple positions, someone who brings defensive intensity and versatility. And when you start looking around the league for players who fit that profile, players who might be available, players whose teams might be willing to discuss a trade, one name keeps surfacing in these conversations: Herbert Jones of the New Orleans Pelicans. Now, before I dive into why this makes so much sense, let me give you the context on Jones, because if you're not familiar with his game, you need to understand what we're talking about here. Jones is one of the premier perimeter defenders in the entire NBA. He's made the all-defensive team, he's someone opposing coaches have to game plan around, and he's the kind of player who can completely change a team's defensive identity. His length, his instincts, his ability to guard positions 1 through 4, all of it makes him an incredibly valuable asset in today's positionless basketball landscape. What makes Jones special isn't just his on-ball defense, though that's elite. It's his versatility. He can switch onto guards and stay in front of them. He can match up with wings and use his length to contest shots. He can even hold his own against smaller forwards in the post. That kind of defensive flexibility is exactly what the Lakers need. When you're facing teams like Oklahoma City with their multiple offensive weapons, or Denver with their diverse scoring options, or Phoenix with their star-studded lineup, you need defenders who can handle different matchups within the same possession. Jones provides that. His offensive game, while not his calling card, has improved over his time in New Orleans. He's a capable three-point shooter. He's smart as a cutter, and he understands how to play within a system. He's not going to demand the ball. He's not going to disrupt the offensive flow we've established, but he can knock down open shots when defenses help off him, and he can make the right play when opportunities present themselves. For a Lakers team that already has plenty of offensive firepower, adding someone who can contribute on that end without needing plays called for him is ideal. Now, let's talk about why New Orleans might be willing to discuss a trade. The Pelicans are in a complicated situation. They've dealt with injuries, they're trying to figure out their long-term direction, and they have some difficult decisions to make about their roster construction. Jones is in the final year of his current contract, and while they'd love to keep him, the financial realities of building around their other core pieces might make retaining him challenging. If they believe they can't afford to keep him long-term, or if they're not sure he fits their timeline, trading him now, while his value is high, might make sense for their franchise. From the Lakers' perspective, acquiring Jones would address our most glaring weakness. Imagine our defense with a player of his caliber on the wing. Suddenly, we can switch more comfortably on the perimeter. We can pressure opposing ball handlers, knowing we have someone who can recover and contest. We can be more aggressive with our defensive schemes because we have a safety valve who can clean up mistakes. The impact would be immediate and significant, and it would make us a much more complete team heading into the playoffs. What would a trade package look like? This is where it gets tricky because we have to balance what New Orleans would want with what we can realistically offer without gutting our roster. We'd likely need to include some combination of rotation players, potentially a young prospect or two, and whatever draft capital we have available. The Pelicans would want players who can contribute now, or assets they can flip for future value. Constructing a deal that works financially, that satisfies both teams' needs, and that doesn't require us to give up anyone essential to our core would require some creative maneuvering from our front office. But here's why I'm optimistic this could happen. Both teams have incentive to make a deal. The Lakers need defensive help to maximize this championship window with LeBron. The Pelicans might need to make a move if they don't think they can keep Jones long-term, or if they want to reshape their roster. The fit makes sense from a basketball perspective, and if the financial pieces can be aligned, there's a path to making this work. It would require both front offices to be willing to negotiate, to find common ground, and to structure a deal that benefits both franchises. The timing of such a move would be crucial. We're approaching the midpoint of the season, and trade discussions around the league are starting to heat up. Teams are evaluating their rosters, figuring out if they're buyers or sellers, and making decisions about their direction. For the Lakers, if we continue playing at this level, if we maintain our position near the top of the Western Conference, the urgency to make a move will only increase. The front office will be under pressure from ownership, from LeBron, from the fan base, to do everything possible to capitalize on this opportunity. There's also the question of what happens if we don't make a move. Can this current roster, as constructed, compete for a championship? The offensive firepower is clearly there. When we're clicking, we can score with anyone in the league. But defense wins championships, and our defensive limitations have been exposed against elite offensive teams. In a 7-game series against Oklahoma City or Denver, can we get enough stops to win 4 games? That's the question the front office has to answer, and if the answer is no, then making a move becomes imperative. Jones wouldn't be the only option, of course. There are other wing defenders around the league who might be available, other players who could fill a similar role, but Jones represents the ideal combination of defensive excellence, offensive competence, and potential availability. He's young enough to fit our timeline, experienced enough to contribute immediately, and talented enough to make a real difference. If we can pull off a trade for him, it would signal to the league that we're all in on this season, that we're serious about competing for a championship, and that we're willing to make the moves necessary to maximize our potential. Think about what our rotation would look like with Jones in the fold. Our starting five would have elite two-way capability. We'd have offensive creators who can score at all three levels, and we'd have a defensive stopper who can take on the toughest assignment every night. Our bench would still have depth, we'd still have the versatility to play different styles depending on matchups, and we'd have addressed our biggest weakness without sacrificing what makes us good. That's the kind of move that can elevate a good team to a great team, a playoff contender to a championship favorite. The Lakers have a history of making big moves when the moment demands it, from the Magic Johnson era to the Kobe and Shaq dynasty to the more recent championship run with LeBron and AD. This franchise has never been afraid to be aggressive when opportunities present themselves. The culture here is about winning championships, not just making the playoffs or having respectable seasons. If the front office believes adding someone like Herbert Jones gives us a legitimate shot at banner number 18, they'll find a way to make it happen. I want to be clear with you, Lakers Nation, I'm not reporting that a trade for Jones is imminent or that negotiations are currently underway. What I'm doing is connecting the dots, analyzing the situation, and explaining why this move makes so much sense for where we are as a franchise right now. The defensive needs are obvious. The potential availability of a player like Jones creates an opportunity, and our championship window demands that we explore every avenue to improve. Whether it's Jones or another impact defender, some kind of move feels increasingly likely as we progress through this season. The next few weeks will be crucial. We'll see if our defensive issues persist or if the internal adjustments can solve them. We'll see if other teams around the league start making moves that force us to respond. We'll see if players like Jones become more clearly available as their teams make decisions about their direction. Herbert Jones represents the kind of impact defender who could transform our team, address our biggest weakness, and elevate us from a good team to a championship-caliber squad. Whether it's Jones or someone else, expect the Lakers to be active in exploring options as we move toward the trade deadline. This franchise doesn't settle for good enough, and neither should we as fans. If you want to stay on top of every development, every trade possibility, and every piece of breaking news surrounding the Lakers, you need to be subscribed to Lakers News Fan Report. Hit that subscribe button right now, smash the notification bell so you never miss an update, and drop a like on this video if you found this analysis valuable. Comment below with your thoughts on a potential Herbert Jones trade and what you'd be willing to give up to make it happen. Share this video with every Lakers fan you know who needs to understand what might be coming down the pipeline. We're building the premier Lakers community on YouTube, and your engagement makes that possible. Let's go Lakers, let's get that 18th banner, and let's make this season 1 to remember.